aitah for telling my best friend's dad has the reason my friend committed suicide. I know this sounds harsh. I know it sounds cruel. But I swear I didn't say it to hurt him. I said it because someone needed to. The truth is, I've been carrying this sentence in my chest for over a year. It's burned behind my teeth every time I saw him pretend to be the grieving father. Every time he gave a speech about mental health awareness like he wasn't the very reason his son decided he couldn't live anymore. That son was my best friend, Ethan. We grew up 2 streets apart, met in middle school, and spent most of our teenage years inseparable. If you saw one of us, the other wasn't far behind. Ethan was the kind of person who laughed too loud, cared too much, and always made you feel seen. But behind that, there was this heaviness. He never hid the fact that his dad was strict, not in the do your homework kind of way, in the you'll never be good enough kind of way. He used to say, half joking, if I ever get hit by a car, my dad would ask if I was paying attention to the road, and we'd laugh, because what else could we do? Then came college. Different cities, but we still called every day. Except, around our 2nd year, Ethan started sounding off, like he was shrinking inside himself. He told me his dad had started visiting his campus, unannounced, checking up on his grades, his apartment, even his social life. Once, Ethan said, I feel like I'm living on parole for crimes I didn't commit. He'd get these panic attacks before every call home. I begged him to get help. He said he was trying, but every time he started therapy, his dad would find out and say things like, so now you're paying strangers to tell you how to think. You're smarter than that. That line still makes me sick. Then, one night, I got a text. It was just one line. Thank you for being the only one who ever listened. I called him right away. No answer. I called again and again. By the time I got someone to check his dorm, it was already too late. They said it looked peaceful. It didn't feel that way. The funeral was a blur. Ethan's dad gave this long speech about how hard it is to understand the mind of a young man, how his son was battling invisible demons. People cried. People nodded. And I stood there, shaking, thinking you were the demon. But I didn't say anything. Not then. Not when it would have sounded like grief talking. So I swallowed it. Every day. Every time I saw another awareness post or charity event that Ethan's father organized in his name, I bit my tongue until it bled. Until last week, Ethan's parents held a memorial dinner. 1 year since his death. They invited me. Part of me didn't want to go, but I did because his mom had been kind to me and I wanted to honor Ethan somehow. The dinner was small. Family, a few old friends, a few teachers. At one point, his dad stood up to speak. He started talking about how Ethan's struggle taught him compassion, about how much he had learned as a parent. And that's when something in me snapped. I don't even remember standing up. But I remember my voice, shaking but loud enough for everyone to hear. No, you don't get to say that. You didn't learn compassion. You killed it every time he tried to show it. The room went dead silent. I could feel everyone staring, but I couldn't stop. You humiliated him for crying. You mocked him for therapy. You told him feeling sad was weakness. He didn't just struggle. He begged for mercy in a house that made him feel like a mistake. His dad just sat there, white as a sheet. His mom covered her mouth. Someone whispered, "That's enough." But I wasn't done. You want to talk about invisible demons. You made them, and the worst part is, now you get to act like you're the victim. I left right after. Didn't wait for a response. Since then, everything's been chaos. Ethan's mom called me 2 days later, sobbing, saying I shouldn't have said it, that his dad's still grieving. Some of our old friends said I went too far. Others said I was right, but it wasn't my place. And maybe they're right. Maybe I shouldn't have said it there, in front of everyone. Maybe there was a kinder way. But I can't shake the image of Ethan sitting on his dorm floor that night, phone in hand, believing no one would ever defend him. Not even me. I defended him too late. So maybe that outburst wasn't justice. Maybe it was guilt. But if telling the truth makes me the asshole, then I guess I can live with that. Because Ethan couldn't. Continuation. The aftermath of the truth the morning after the dinner. I woke up to 23 unread messages. At first, I thought something terrible had happened. Then I realized it already had. People from that night had started texting. Some short, cold messages. You went too far. That wasn't your place. You should apologize. Others were quiet, almost secretive. You said what everyone wanted to. He needed to hear that. You were brave. But the one that mattered most never came. Ethan's mom didn't text again. For days, I replayed the moment over and over in my head, his father's pale face, the way his fork dropped, the sound of someone's breath catching behind me. Part of me wanted to take it back. Part of me wanted to scream it louder. Grief does strange things to people. So does silence. The next week, I went to Ethan's grave. It's in a quiet corner of the cemetery, under a big oak tree, the kind of spot he would have liked. I brought coffee, his favorite caramel latte, extra sweet, and sat there for an hour, just talking like I used to. I finally said it. I told him, "You'd probably tell me I was an idiot for doing it in public, but someone had to." The wind picked up then. It sounds click, but it felt like an answer. Maybe forgiveness. Maybe not. 3 days later, I got a call from Ethan's mom. Her voice was shaky but calm. "Can you come over?" she asked. "We need to talk." I didn't want to, but something in her tone, a strange mixture of pain and exhaustion, made me say yes. When I arrived, the house looked exactly the same. Same framed family photos, same scent of lavender and lemon cleaner. But it felt hollow. She was sitting in the living room, hands clasped tightly around a mug that had long gone cold. "He hasn't left the bedroom much since that night," she said quietly. "He says you hate him." I didn't know what to say to that, so I said nothing. Then she added, "But I don't think you're wrong." Her eyes filled with tears. "You just said what I've thought for years, but never had the courage to admit." She looked down at her mug and whispered, "He broke Ethan long before he ever realized it." Hearing her say that should have felt like vindication. Instead, it felt like grief all over again, because it meant she knew. She had always known. Over the next few weeks, I heard rumors that Ethan's dad stopped attending church, that he resigned from his job, that people in their community had started whispering. Not loudly, but enough for him to feel it. I tried not to care, but guilt has a way of finding cracks in your peace. One night, around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. "Unknown number. You ruined my life," the message read. "You think you're a hero, but all you did was destroy what was left of our family." It didn't say who it was, but I didn't need to ask. I stared at that message for a long time. Then I typed back, "You did that yourself," and deleted it before sending. Because what was the point? Had never understand. Months passed. The world kept spinning. People moved on from Ethan's story. That's what happens. Even grief has an expiration date in other people's minds. But not for me. For me, it's still the first night. The call. The silence. I started therapy. For the first time in my life, I sat across from someone and said it out loud. He made my best friend hate himself, and I hated myself for staying quiet. The therapist nodded gently and said, "You weren't responsible for what Ethan's father did. You were responsible for your own silence, and now you've broken it." It wasn't comfort exactly, but it was truth. And truth, I learned, doesn't always heal. Sometimes it just stops the bleeding. A few months ago, Ethan's mom reached out again. She asked if I'd help her organize a small scholarship fund in Ethan's name. Something that would help students struggling with depression. We met at a coffee plan. She looked tired but lighter somehow. She told me she'd moved out. "I couldn't stay in that house anymore," she said. "Too many ghosts." We talked for hours, about Ethan, about the scholarship, about life after loss. Before we left, she handed me a small envelope. Inside was a folded piece of notebook paper written in Ethan's handwriting. The date on top was 2 weeks before he died. It said, "If anything ever happens to me, tell Mom I'm sorry. Tell Dad I wish he knew how to love without hurting. Tell you, thank you for always being real with me, even when I didn't want to hear it." My vision blurred halfway through reading it. I'd never seen those words before. She smiled sadly. "I found it while packing. I think he meant for you to have it." I couldn't speak, because in that moment I realized Ethan had already forgiven both of us. I visited his grave again the next day. It was sunny this time, almost too bright. I brought another coffee, sat down in the grass, and said, "You were right. I should have spoken sooner, but I did it. And maybe now it's done." And for the first time, I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel guilty. Just quiet. Like the kind of silence that doesn't choke you anymore. It just is. A few weeks later, I got one last message This time from Ethan's mom again. Has in therapy now, she wrote. He finally admitted some things. It's not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe it's the start. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. Because sometimes justice isn't loud. Sometimes it's just the echo of truth finally being heard, even if it comes too late. I still dream about Ethan sometimes. Always the same one. We're sitting in the park near our old school, sharing coffee, arguing about music, has laughing again, that loud, unstoppable laugh, and I wake up smiling instead of crying. Maybe that's what peace really is. Not forgetting the pain, but remembering the person behind it. And when I think about that night, the night I finally told the truth, I still wonder if I was the asshole. Maybe I was. But at least now the silence isn't winning anymore. Final continuation. The weight of the words. It's been almost a year since that night. Since the silence broke and everything that came after. People like to say that time heals, but they don't tell you that sometimes time just hides the wound under prettier scars. I still live in the same apartment, still drink too much coffee, still pass by places Ethan and I used to hang out, the corner bench near the record store, the old pier where Head sit with his headphones on, staring at the water as if it was talking back. But the world feels different now, quieter, colder, more fragile. After what happened, the small town we lived in split right down the middle. Some called me brave, the one who said what no one else dared to. Others called me cruel, the one who kicked a grieving father when he was already broken. But none of them knew. None of them saw the messages Ethan sent me at 3 a.m. None of them heard the tremor in his voice when he said, if I fail again, has going to call me a disappointment for the rest of my life. None of them watched him shrink every time his father opened his mouth. So no, I didn't ruin that man's life. Had been digging his own grave for years. I just put a mirror in front of it. A few months after the confrontation, I got called to a meeting at my old high school. They were hosting an awareness program. Mental Health Week, they called it. Someone on the board had apparently heard about what I said that night, and they wanted me to share my perspective. At first, I refused. The thought of standing in front of a crowd, speaking Ethan's name out loud again. It felt impossible, but his mom convinced me. Maybe it'll help someone else, she said softly. Maybe that's what Ethan would have wanted. So I did it. When I walked into that gymnasium, the air felt heavy. The kind of silence you can hear echoing in your chest. I started shaking halfway through my speech, but then I looked up and saw the faces. Kids who looked like Ethan, kids who looked like me, sitting there with the same tired sadness in their eyes, and something in me just broke open. No one should feel like they're too small to be loved, I said. No one should have to earn the right to exist. By the time I finished, the room was dead silent. Then one kid, just one, stood up and clapped, and then another, and another. It wasn't loud applause. It wasn't thunderous. It was soft, fragile, real, like the sound of people finally understanding something they've been afraid to name. Later, as I was leaving, a girl approached me, maybe 16. She looked nervous, clutching the strap of her backpack. My dad's like that too, she whispered. He says it'll never be good enough. But after hearing you, I think I might tell someone. She smiled, just barely, and for the first time in a long time, I felt something like purpose. Maybe Ethan's story wasn't over after all. But peace is never permanent. About 2 months later, I ran into Ethan's dad again. It was at the grocery store, of all places. He looked older, thinner, like time had drained the color out of him. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for a carton of milk. When he saw me, he froze. I thought he'd lash out. I braced myself for it. But instead, he said quietly, I know what I did. You didn't lie. He paused. But you didn't understand, either. I didn't reply. Because what could I say to a man who had finally looked at the wreckage he created, and still didn't know what to do with it? He left his basket behind and walked out of the store. And I stood there feeling more empty than triumphant. Because that's the thing about truth. It doesn't always fix things. Sometimes it just burns everything down and leaves you with ashes that don't mean anything anymore. A few weeks later, I went back to Ethan's grave for what I told myself would be the last time for a while. I brought flowers, not the store-bought kind, but ones I picked from the trail we used to walk together. I sat down, exhaled, and started talking. Not to his ghost, not to the memory, but to the silence. I don't hate him anymore, I said. I just wish I'd seen you for who you were instead of who he wanted you to be. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through old photos. our blurry selfies, our dumb inside jokes. That one summer trip we never stopped talking about. And I started to cry. Not the loud kind. Just quiet tears falling onto the dirt, because even after everything, the confrontation, the fallout, the pain, the truth didn't bring Ethan back. It just made his absence louder. Months later, I moved to a new city. I needed distance from the whispers, from the looks, from the memories that followed me everywhere. I started writing again, about grief, about guilt, about the impossible weight of being the one left behind. People online started reading my posts. Some shared their own stories. Some said my words helped them say what they couldn't. And slowly, the guilt started to change shape. It didn't disappear. It just stopped owning me, because maybe that's what healing really is. Not erasing the pain, but learning how to carry it without letting it break you. One night, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside, a single sentence written in uneven handwriting. Has getting help now. Thank you. I didn't need to ask who it was from. I sat on my bed for a long time after that, staring at those 5 words, and for the first time since Ethan died, I felt like maybe something had shifted. Not redemption, not forgiveness, but something close enough to peace that it almost hurt. Sometimes I still dream about that night at the dinner table, the clinking glasses, the stunned silence, the look on his father's face when I finally told the truth. And sometimes in the dream, Ethan is standing behind me. He puts a hand on my shoulder and says, "You did what I couldn't." I always wake up crying. But this time, it's not from regret. It's from the strange, unbearable relief of knowing that maybe, just maybe, I did the right thing after all. Epilogue: if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. The truth doesn't save people. It doesn't heal the past. It doesn't fix broken fathers or bring back dead friends. But it matters. It echoes, and sometimes it plants something new in the ruins, something small but alive. So no, I don't regret what I said that night, because silence killed Ethan long before he died, and I refuse to be part of that silence anymore.